Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me today for episode 25 of season 5 of Black Writers Read. My name is Nicole Young Martin, and I'm the founder, producer, and host for the series. So, before we get started, for folks who watch and support a lot, you may notice something different. I lost my voice a couple of days ago. For folks who have been following for some time, I've dealt with some version of a cough since I had COVID in 2022. And the cough just was like, yeah, we're going to take you down right now. So I'm not at full voice right now. So my apologies. Please ride with us. This is going to be an amazing, amazing interview. I've been waiting for the longest time to host this guest because we've touched base probably about a year ago or so to schedule this interview. So I'm so excited. So today's guest writes young adult fiction, which is a genre that is so close to my heart. One, because of what the YA genre does in terms of giving voice to our young people, especially people who have been told to be seen and not heard. Also, too, what I love about YA is about the formative years and how they're exploring their worlds, how they're exploring their own identities and their own self actualization. It brings me back to when I was a teenager and all of the beautiful things and all the beautiful literature that I had access to as a young person. And I think that I am the way that I am today, not only because of my parents and my family and being an only child for a long time and being boisterous and boisterous around, yes, I made a word, boisterous, boisterous and boisterous around adults, just having access to so much culture and literature when I was growing up. So I want to thank all the YA authors out there, and I most especially want to thank our guests for being here today. So let's get started. Black Writers Read showcases, celebrates, and honors the words, work, and traditions of Black writers from across the country, across genres, across experiences, and across the African diaspora. Black Writers Read is a behind-the-scenes conversation into the craft and what it means to create as a Black author in today's society. Since starting the series during the summer of 2020, we've hosted over 80 authors representing over 15 genres from 5 countries and 26 states. Our platform includes the live stream interviews, the audio podcasts, book clubs, and curriculum integration assistance. Find us online at blackwritersread.com. Today, we welcome Arriel Vinson. Arriel Vinson is a Reese's Book Club Lit Up Fellow and Midwesterner. What up? I'm originally from Detroit, who writes about being young, Black, and in search of freedom. She earned her MFA in fiction from Sarah Lawrence College. Her poetry, fiction, and essays have appeared in Quayle Journal, which, if you remember, we had its founding editor, Laura Pegram, on last week to talk about their short story anthology, Saying the Truth, which I also forgot to mention off camera to Arriel that Laura will be in touch with you soon. Catapult, The Rompus, Waxwing, and others. Arriel is a 10 House YA scholar, Highlights Foundation Scholarship recipient, and a 2020 Walter Grant recipient. Under the Neon Lights, a YA novel in verse, is her debut. You can connect with her on social media at Ari Writes and find her work at ariwrites.com. Throughout our time together, I will be sharing the link to her website and also to find her on social media. Today, we will be chatting about her debut novel, Under the Neon Lights. 16-year-old Jalen Coleman lives for Saturdays at Westside Roll, the iconic neighborhood roller rink. On these magical nights, Jay can lose herself in the music of DJ Sunny, the smell of nachos from the concession, and the crowd of some of her favorite people, old heads, dance crews, and other regulars like herself. Here, Jay and other Black teens can fully be themselves. One Saturday, as Jay skates away her worries, she crashes into the cutest boy she's ever seen. I love romance. Trey's dimples, rich brown skin, and warm smile make it impossible for her to be mad at him, though. Best of all, he can't stop finding excuses to be around her. A nice change for once, in contrast with her best friend's cold distance of late or her estranged father creeping back into her life, which I have some questions about these relationships in our interview. Just as Jay thinks her summer night changed for the better, devastating news hits. West Side Roll is shutting down. The gentrification rapidly taking over her predominantly Black Indianapolis neighborhood, filling it with luxury apartments and fancy boutiques, has come to her safe haven. and this is just one trouble Jay can't skate away from. Debut author Arriel Vinson's lyrical and contemplative story of young Black love and coming of age in Indianapolis ushers in an exciting new voice in young adult literature. Under the Neon Lights is scheduled for release on June 3rd and is now available for purchase wherever you buy your books. Please check out bookshop.org to find and support your local independent bookstore. And by the way, I also want to mention it is a privilege and an honor to have Ariel on before she kicks off her book tour in the next week and a half. For those of you who are new to Black Writers Read, here's the format. Ariel will read an excerpt from Under the Neon Lights, and then we'll chat about her book. If time remains at the end of the conversation, we'll open it up to question and answer. For those of you who are joining us today, we typically have folks joining us from Facebook and YouTube. If you have a question, please feel free to include it in the comments section on the platform where you're joining us from today. I will compile the questions and either pose them to our guests following our conversation or insert them during an appropriate time within our chat. I'd now like to welcome Arriel Vinson to the virtual stage. Hello.
Hi, Nicole. Thank you so much for having me.
This is awesome, and thank you for being on. I remember when we connected, I think it was almost a year ago or so.
Yes, forever ago.
We connected, and you have been on top of it. You sent me the ARC immediately when it came out, all the emails, and I was like, yes, I'm so excited to have you on.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. You've sent me some beautiful questions, so I'm really excited to chat and just talk about Under the Neon Lights.
Yeah, so the time is yours to read. Happy reading, and I'll be back shortly.
Thank you. So I'm going to read from chapter 1 of Under the Neon Lights, just a short little excerpt here. DJ Sunny gets on the mic with recycled lines I savor. How y'all feeling tonight? The lights flicker on above the rink floor, remove us from the shadows. We're gonna get it rocking. Remember, if you don't have skates on, you cannot be on the rink floor. If you want to dance, go by the lockers. If you don't want to turn up at West Side Roll, go home. We shout the last bit with him, echoing the mantra that makes us family. As much as I love skating with my best friend Noelle, shoulder to shoulder while we scope out cute guys, I also love skating alone. Just me, eyes closed, little hips swinging, mouth wide, singing loudly. Even though the rink is always noisy, skaters shouting, singing, counting for a routine, jumping into a spin. In your zone, you can't hear none of it. So here I am in the middle of the skate floor, hoping to sweat out everything I've pent up inside. I spin to a mid-tempo song I can get lost in, wrap myself around each note like a weighted blanket. My father taught me this before he became someone I could no longer love loudly. I spread my arms wide, then bring them close for balance. He taught me how to close myself off from love. Spin, spin, spin. I am a tornado tearing through the rink. I throw my arms back, out, sharp and straight, doing a 360 spin. He taught me how to turn away quickly, how to avoid being still, being stuck, staying. As my feet glide across the sleek floor, I close my eyes, hum the melody, let it take over, let it take over, let it take over. Then a body slams into me, knocks me down. I'm writhing, trying to get up, and that's the hardest part about falling in the first place. The first rule of West Side Roll, watch where you're going. I look up, try to focus on the culprit who lets sorry spill from his mouth again and again like it's the only word he knows. He towers over me, smooth brown skin glistening with sweat, thick eyebrows in such panic that they nearly meet his coily hairline. I say, it's okay, and his shoulders relax. He's gorgeous, so I forgive the mistake despite the pain shooting through my back. He stares, and I imagine he's studying all the parts of me I try not to think about. My curly strands now astray, my ordinary brown eyes, my wide nose and plump cheeks, my skinny frame, my deep brown skin. My parents met at West Side Roll. My mama would chase my dad on skates, steal his sweats towel from his back pocket, which is gross, really, and hope he'd catch her. He did, And I never asked for the rest of the story, but I know they were here every weekend, tall tees to their knees, baby hair gel swicked and swooped, chunky gold rope chains against their chests like Olympic medals. I've seen pictures and couldn't help but laugh at the fashion. Don't be laughing. We were fly, my mama would say, tucking the photos back into her album. I take it you don't skate often, I say. The guy rubs his palm over his curly hair, faded sides, down to his neck, then looks into my eyes. He sticks out the same hand to help me up and says, I'm new here, which is obvious. Newcomers keep their eyes locked on other skaters' synchronized feet, stunned by our quickness. Once I'm up, I do what's expected of me. Tell him my name is Jalen, but he can call me Jay. What's up, JJ? I'm Trey. He reaches his hand out again, and I'm not confident I can handle his pedal soft touch a second time. He doesn't drop his gaze. A slight smile inches across his face. I meet his hand, my fingers trembling. I said, Jay. I know. I roll my eyes, let go, already knowing he's way too sure of himself. I skate off and exit the rink floor, leaving him behind. He's one of those guys who turns heads when he skates by. One of those guys that a girl would drop everything for. So beautiful that even the prettiest might doubt herself. He's probably self-centered, maybe an athlete, always keeps a girlfriend. I don't have the space to think about him. Not today, not tomorrow, not any day. My problems take up all the room. Thank you all.
Two things before I launch into my questions.
Mm-hmm.
Girl, I love how Black this is.
Very Black, very Black.
And I read it on the page,
mm-hmm.
but hearing it aloud, it is super Black.
Thank you. I had to put on for my city. I had to put on for the skating rink. But I also think, there's something to be said about writing the Blackness that you are and writing the blackness you know. So I wanted other people to experience that at the skating rink too, even if they don't skate. I wanted them to experience that in the book.
Yes, and I also saw when I was prepping for the interview that you have performed some of your work at New York Weekend.
Oof, somebody needs to take that down.
Oh no!
I'm joking. I love it.
Is there an audiobook in plan, and do you plan on narrating? Because I think you should, because just the way that because you have experience with spoken word, the way that it lands, I hope this doesn't sound weird, but the way that it lands off of your mouth, it's very beautiful to hear. And then also I think it's so empowering to hear the author who also has experience with spoken word do the audiobook.
I'm not doing the audiobook. I wish I was, and I didn't think about it until after, they sent me some auditions and I was like, oh, I really like this person. And I was like, maybe I'll do the next one. Because I don't know. I think many poets do their own novels in verse. They narrate their own novels in verse. And I was like kind of scared. So I just never said anything. I never asked. I never said anything. I was just scared that it wasn't, that I wasn't going to be able to sustain all of that for as long as most narrators can, keeping the voice, switching between Jay and Trey and the parents and all that. But I, maybe for the second one, because that's also in verse. So
nice. Which there is a question that came in from one of our viewers that I will be inserting later in our conversation. Because actually, and I'm glad that Leah poses this question because I was trying to figure out how to ask this question, especially since I'm from the Midwest as well, but I'm glad somebody posed it.
Midwest stand up.
Yes, I will be inserting it.
Perfect.
So the first question I have for you is, I'd love to start off today's conversation by hearing the origin story of Under the Neon Lights. Why the story, and why the story right now?
Yeah, so Under the Neon Lights was born from a car conversation with my friend, who's also an author, Leah Johnson. We were in grad school. We were, I think, fresh off of eating some Taco Bell. We were broke back then. So, and we were sitting in the car, and I was complaining about, one, my thesis, and two, why there aren't any roller skating books, or there weren't any roller skating books at that time that centered Black roller skating culture. And she was like, didn't you just write a short story for a workshop about the roller skating rink? Couldn't that be, you need to write the novel. This is on you. And I was like, I don't know. But I took that advice, and I ended up telling my thesis advisor and telling my workshop instructors that that's what I wanted to do. And so they kind of guided me into, okay, write Jalen in this scene, write Jalen at home. Does Jalen work? If so, what does she do? And they were also really helpful in pointing me to different resources. So I always knew I wanted the skating rink to close, because that is just what happens to roller skating rinks. But I also, there was so much I didn't know. So one professor pointed me to the United Skates documentary, which I watch a million times. Actually, it's so nerdy. The United Skates documentary, which kind of talks about skating rinks closing across the United States. Another one pointed me to another documentary, articles, etc. And so Under the Neon Lights, which was not Under the Neon Lights at that time, became so much bigger than that short story. And I think it's important right now because, yes, it's about gentrification, and yes, it's about friendship and first love and all those things. But at the result of gentrification is community, and figuring out how to show up for your community, how to be a better community member, how to keep those connections close once the place that's keeping you around each other is gone. And I think especially during this administration, that's important. It's always important, but it's even more important as we're losing things every day, as we're losing rights every day, as we're losing places, colleges, etc., people every day. We need to be thinking about how we show up for our community members, and how we, sometimes have to go out of our way to keep our community safe.
Yeah, and I have a question about this
Mhm.
later on, but I'm so glad that you wrote on gentrification, because so many of us have been impacted by gentrification. Like, one of the
Yeah.
stories that I love sharing is, so where I went to one of my many grad degrees.
I know, that's right.
I spent too much money. I went to Wayne
Well,
State. Yeah.
mhm,
I went to Wayne State, which is in Detroit. And at the
mhm.
time, and I have family members who went to Wayne State. So I'm like second generation Wayne State.
Right, right.
And at the time, it was called the Cass Corridor, and it always has been.
Mhm,
And it was a place where you could get really cheap rent.
mhm,
There were like, sex workers. There
mhm.
were like dive bars,
Love a
like,
dive bar.
right. And there were also times like my apartment even ended up getting
Yeah.
broken into when I lived there.
Mhm.
And there were times when like the Wayne State Police used to every month
Yeah.
publish a digest of the cars that got stolen in
Oh
the
my
parking
goodness.
lot.
Oh my gosh.
Right. And I last
Mhm,
went back to I haven't been back to Detroit in a while
mhm.
because family have passed on. But
Right.
what was it, 2018 or so? I was
Mhm.
in now it's called Midtown. I was like, what
Right.
is that?
What is this? What is this new stuff?
What is this? And literally on one block, this is
Mhm.
the sign of gentrification. On
Yeah.
one block, there was a bubble tea shop, a
Mhm.
Thai restaurant,
That'll do it.
a yoga studio, and the biggest one that got to me was there was a puppy accessory store. Not pet store,
Right, just accessories.
just accessories. And then
Mhm,
lastly,
mhm.
like, it was literally the perfect picture of gentrification because I was there late at night, and
Right,
there was like a white
right.
dude running with iPods, and I was
They're
like, oh,
always running. They're always running. You know your neighborhood is getting gentrified when you see people running. Once people start running, somebody so I'm in Indianapolis, and someone put on Threads, "Hey, I just saw someone running on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard." I said, "Oh, not them. They're the cheapest area to live in." So you know it's getting gentrified when people start running.
right. And then the whole and like and now it doesn't look the same because
Mhm.
now there's this monorail. And I was
Wow.
like, what? The monorail takes you no. I was like, what is all these caterings to white people? I was like, okay.
Mhm, mhm.
And then not only are we losing so many things are
Right.
being particularly stolen.
Mm, mm.
Stolen and hidden like it didn't.
Oh, I don't like that.
Right. Like it didn't happen. And I'm
Right,
like,
right.
you can't take away from me the fact
Mhm.
that my people came on a cruise ship with no return ticket.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly. Never. Never. We'll never forget. So they can take it out the books all they want, but we'll never forget.
no. And I just, this whole, like, I had a conversation with some of my students
Mhm.
the other week. They were like,
Mhm.
why are they banning books and all sorts of stuff? And I literally had to say that because
Yeah.
I go, I'm going to take my professor cap off right now and put on my
Right.
activist cap.
Right.
And I was like, because white people don't want to know the
Mhm.
truth about their
Mhm.
ancestors. That
Yeah.
I'm what that
Right. Right. That's it. That's the story. There's nothing more complicated. That's the story.
that is the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's sad because your book is so black.
Mhm.
And at the same time, it's so black in that there
Mhm.
are particular things that you have to include in your book.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about Under the Neon Lights is I didn't get to include a lot of the history of roller skating rinks, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. But we couldn't skate until the civil rights movement, at least at skating rinks. And so it took, it took a lot. It took a lot. It took a lot of protesting. It took Roller Man rolling from the Midwest all the way to the March on Washington on skates, to for roller skaters to actually be able to skate at a skating rink, on nights other than Martin Luther King Jr. night. And so I found it really important, even though I couldn't, spread those little tidbits in the book. That is a lot of why I was thinking about gentrification, about the closing, about all of these other Black things I included, because we have made it very Black. I think the thing
Mhm.
about Black people is we take a space and we make it ours. And so I wanted Jalen in the book to figure out how to make the skating rink hers, even when it was gone, and what that looked like. And you know what? White people might not like the book, and that's okay. Y'all can still buy it,
Yeah.
but but they might not like it.
Yes, and put it on your library shelf. If you are like, I'm white
Mhm.
and I don't want to read this, buy it for somebody else.
Yes, absolutely. Put it in a free little library. Do all the things.
Do all the things. So I typically ask this type of question towards the end, but this
Mhm.
question I think is really going to open up the conversation,
Sure.
especially given how black it is and given
Mhm.
how gentrification shows up in all these things.
Mhm.
Prior to having our guests on Black Writers Read, we ask each of them why they write. Here's what you offer. I write for Black girls who need to see themselves, who need to see the way love, joy, and community can positively shape their lives. And at any time, no matter how the world looks, Black writers are needed. We are the best tellers of our own stories. I love that line.
Thank you.
When we have the power to shape what our stories look like, we can imagine a better world for ourselves. The book opens with a quote from poet Lucille Clifton's In the Inner City. So the line reads, and then I want to read the whole poem to give it context. So the line that opens the book is, we hang on to our no place, happy to be alive. This is the whole poem. In the inner city, or like we call it home, we think a lot about uptown and the silent nights and the houses straight as dead men and the pastel lights, and we hang on to our no place, happy to be alive, and the inner city, or like we call it home. Our ancestor, Lucille Clifton. How does your work and this specific quote guide your work, and how is it informed under the neon lights?
When I read this poem, I was like, that's it. That's it. Because I had been looking for something, I had been looking for the epigraph for a while, and none of them were, they just weren't what I needed for Under the Neon Lights. But once I read this poem, and I read Lucille Clifton all the time, I teach Lucille Clifton, I was like, oh, this is it. And this is one of the poems, at least in my experience, that I haven't seen taught a lot. Um, and so I was like, yeah, we hang on to our no place, happy to be alive, because the skating rink becomes a no place. Jalen and Trey and her best friend Noelle have to figure out what their lives look like without the skating rink, have to figure out how they can hang on, how they can create community, how they can still be alive in those ways that the skating rink made them. And so you have to hang on to it. You have to hang on to those little pieces of joy that you have in your life if you want to continue creating it. So that, of course, guided Under the Neon Lights and how I thought about how Jalen should resist. Under the Neon Lights started as a book about protesting in the community, and it became a book about building community. And for context, I was really taking the manuscript seriously in 2020. So, we were protesting the murder of George Floyd. We were protesting about the lack of care we were getting during the pandemic. We were protesting about so much. And so that is how the novel really took shape at first. And then I was like, I don't know that Jalen is a protest girly. I might be a protest girly, but Jalen might not be. And so I wanted to show different paths of resistance and what that can look like, especially for teens, because, it's so hard for them to sometimes figure out, what can I do? What do I have the right to do? What can I do? How can I make a change or an impact? And in the rest of my work, in all of my work, I talk about race, I talk about class. And so I can always revisit Lucille Clifton. I can always revisit Gwendolyn Brooks. I can revisit Nikki Giovanni, all of the writers who are writing about being Black, are writing about Black womanhood, Black personhood. And I think what's really interesting to me about Lucille Clifton's work is, like the poem you read, the poems are so short, and a lot of people would even call them simple. But I don't think they're simple at all. I think they're so complex, and she was doing so much in so little space. And that's what I'm still trying to master. So not only am I looking at Lucille Clifton's work for the content, but I'm also looking at how does she even do this? She was doing something I don't think I've mastered yet. But she is a guide in how I write poetry. And she is one of the first poets I wrote when I finally decided that I liked poetry.
Yeah, and her work, and I'm glad you mentioned Gwendolyn Brooks, because in a workshop I'm taking right now with Minda Honey, we talked about
Oh, come on, Minda.
I love me some Minda. This is my third time working with her. And we talked about Real Cool, and one of the things that I love about that particular poem, and also Lucille Clifton, which I hate when people say it's simple language.
Right.
Dude, if you can make that much impact in a few words.
And this, right. Exactly.
Right. I'm just like, oh my God. And also the book too, I have to make sure that this is put on air, because I can't believe the 30th anniversary of me going to Interlochen Arts Camp is coming up next summer. I just aged myself. And I remember it, like, in terms of the making space for yourself. So like, it is, for folks who don't know, it is a very prestigious arts camp that's in not the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Yes, I'm doing the glove, but it's like in this part of Michigan that's like out in the middle of nowhere. We had, at the time, this was in 96, we didn't have television, nothing, for like 8 weeks. Now the camp is 6 weeks. And it's people from all over the globe. It's an intense audition to get in. And of course, given that it's people from all over the world, the students of color, we were like, sprinkled throughout. Like, I was in band, a bunch of people were in orchestra, some were in the creative writing program and all those things. And we only came together, not even during meal times, but after dinner, we could gather, I forgot what it's called, on main camp, we could gather for like a couple of hours. And I love how the counselors always tried to break us up. And then they will be very particular about button your knickers, tuck in your shirt, blah, 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 blah. And we'll be like, F this, F that, untucking our stuff. And I remember the last day of camp, we rebelled after Les Preludes, which is the huge final concert. We all went to main camp after boohoo crying because we were going to miss each other. We just started stripping out of our clothes and said, F the rules. It was great.
Exactly. I love the sound of this. Because at some point you have to say F the rules, because the rules don't always serve us. So at some point you have to be like, you know what? We're going to take our own path. We're going to figure out what works for us. And, Black people have to do that all the time. So I think that's ancestral.
Exactly. Yes. I love it. So I love teaching books that center Black female protagonists. I love it. So can you tell us about 16-year-old Jalen Coleman, who also goes by Jay? Who is she, and what can we expect of her journey throughout the book?
So Jay is a shy girl with daddy issues, and she had to be the shy girl with daddy issues because I needed her to find a way to find her own voice and find her self-worth. So throughout Under the Neon Lights, you're going to go on a journey with her, and you might get a little annoyed at some of the things she does or says because she's figuring it out. She has all these complex relationships. She's raised by mostly a single mother. Her parents are divorced. She's navigating her relationship with her father. She's falling in love for the first time, and her best friend is acting funny. So Jalen doesn't know what's going on. Jalen's like, actually, everything is falling apart. I wanted shy girls everywhere, teens and adults, to be able to see themselves in Jalen and to be able to root for her and to be able to watch her grow. And I also put these other people around her who can help her grow in these ways. I want to give a shout out to her granny, who's not really her granny, because that woman is a lot of who instills confidence in Jalen. But also Jalen loses the rink, the place she loves the most, the place her parents met, and she has to decide what's important to her and how important it is, what kind of effort she wants to put in to keep the community she realizes she cares so much about. So Jalen is fun for me. I love Jalen, and perhaps I'll probably love all of my protagonists, but she's a shy girl who's just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and I think the reason why I love Jalen is so I've always been the very extroverted, loud, taking up tons of space. And I realized all of my best friends growing up and as an adult, and even my husband, are all introverts, very quiet. I'm like, how did this happen? And Jalen is so much like my best friend. Like but I didn't do her
Right.
like
Like Noelle
Noelle.
did. Right. And Noelle had to get it together. I was like, in earlier drafts, Noelle was terrible. And I said, you know what? Let me not do my girl Noelle like that. But Noelle is so different from Jalen. And Jalen is maybe who I was when I was in, I'll say middle school, because my friends who met me in high school or in college, they're like, shy. You never gave that. But so Jalen is who I was when I was much younger than she was. But I thought that journey would be really important to see on the page.
And so, as promised, I have some questions that I want to insert. My apologies to one person. I'm going to ask your question soon. Know that it's going in the right place, but there was a question that just came up that I want to ask. What has writing Jalen's story reshaped your own ideas about resistance and taking up space in your own life?
That's such a beautiful question, and I can see it. So thank you, Chan. Jalen has taught me so much. So often YA authors will say, this is the novel I needed when I was a teen. And it wasn't the novel I needed as a teen. It was the novel I needed as an adult. When I was leaving my grad program, I was also getting a divorce. And so I was trying to refigure out who I was. I mean, first of all, I was leaving Sarah Lawrence, where I was meeting all these people that maybe weren't activists, but had very strong views about everything. And I already had strong views about everything. So I was shaping my understanding, or reshaping my understanding of the world, reshaping my understanding of who I am in the world, how I function, where my privileges are. And writing Jalen helped me understand that your resistance can look different from your friends, and your resistance can also look different from where it was maybe when you were younger. So I wanted to chart Jalen a path of resistance that looked like being concerned with the people around her. Because oftentimes with gentrification, by the time you figure out it's about to happen, it's already too late. And so initially, Under the Neon Lights was a book where she was trying to stop gentrification. But I looked at the reality around me, and I'm like, of all the places that I know, of all the streets I know, of all the schools that are closing, by the time the community learns about it, the plans are already rolling. So Jalen helped me understand who I was, how I want to continue showing up, especially once again during this administration, and how I'm not showing up. I think writing about community means reflecting, and thinking about how you're showing up in the world, and what you could be doing better, even for strangers. Again, I was writing this in 2020. And so I am donating to mutual aids for people I've never seen in my life. I'm, reposting things. I'm out in the streets. I'm donating. I'm doing all of these things that maybe I had fell off on beforehand because we're so caught up in our work life, in our romantic life, and all of these different kind of lives. So writing Under the Neon Lights kind of made me wake up again and snap out of that, that post-divorce fog.
Which, excuse me, and my cough is coming.
You're okay.
Which it's been doing good up until this point.
I know. I looked over and I said, oh no. I said, Nicole's down. Nicole's down.
I'm down. Nothing is as bad as my interview with Tara Betts a couple of seasons ago, where we literally had to take a break, and she was like, Nicole dying over there. It was.
Oh, I'm screaming. That's okay. It happens.
Yes. Which I'm glad you mentioned Sarah Lawrence. So one of my closest friends and regular collaborator went to Sarah Lawrence for MFA in fiction a while ago. Diana Alvarez. I can't remember when they graduated, but I remember like them talking about, so they grew up in Texas, Chicana, went to Sarah Lawrence and became an even bigger activist. What is it about Sarah Lawrence?
I wish I could tell you. I really do, because the thing about the MFA, there aren't that many people in the MFA, but I think I think it's the selection. I think it's who they're choosing to come to the programs, because we're all, or not all of us, but many of us are writing about feminism, writing about rights, writing about womanhood, writing about, all these things. And so we're constantly having conversations about our position in the world. But I also think we have to think more about it at Sarah Lawrence, because it's full of students from rich families. And so when you are not a student from a rich family, especially as a grad student, you're looking at these undergrads, it's very strange. But I think because Sarah Lawrence is so small, it's private, the way they protested and the way they resisted looked different than it did at like IU Bloomington, which is where I went for undergrad. But I think it's that small, tight-knit community. And I think it's the fact that there's a very stark difference between the students who have money and the students who don't. And it's very apparent because we're right up on each other. The campus is this big. So I don't know. That's a great question. But I feel like every single one of my friends came out of Sarah Lawrence even more, shouting even louder than we already were.
Yeah. I love it. So I'm going to ask this question, and then I want to ask the question that was posed earlier from our audience. The impacts of gentrification is very salient throughout the book. It is so clearly present. It is like screaming as we see the landscape and people change in Jay's neighborhood and surroundings. Like there was a section that broke my heart, where it was like, I'm passing, like going to the laundromat, that's not there. This restaurant's not there anymore. And it really broke my heart, because I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
I know what that feels like. Can you talk about what inspired you to include gentrification, this specifically, as an important aspect of Jay's world?
Yeah. So the thing about gentrification is it's happening all the time. And I think sometimes we don't notice it. I wanted to use the skating rink as one of those places that goes first, because skating rinks are always closing across the United States. And usually it's because of rezoning, which is a part of gentrification, or it's because there are too many Black people that keep pulling up and they're parked everywhere, all over the neighborhood, and people keep reporting it. And so now we have to close. Or so now, we can't have adult night, or so now we can't have all of these things. And so when I was like, okay, well, the skating rink is closing for sure, I was also like, well, when one thing goes, usually many things go, especially to change for the forthcoming neighborhood, the people who are coming in. And so many times I have driven down Indianapolis streets and I'm like, okay, that shop is gone. That thing is gone. That one thing that I never went to is still there. But it is so different. And I think when I talk about gentrification, I want us to be thinking, one, of the community we keep and how we're keeping each other afloat. But two, I want us to be thinking about our role in gentrification as well, because something that I don't really, I guess, narrow in on is Trey is new to the neighborhood. His family is new to the neighborhood. And so because of the money they have, they are kind of in some ways accelerating the gentrification as well. And I think Trey knows that. There's a few conversations where you can tell that he knows that, and you can tell his parents really don't care. But gentrification is always happening around us. And we should always be thinking about how we are contributing to that, if we're contributing to that, and how we can help our community members as well. It's violent, it's very quiet, often very quiet, but it's violent, and it takes money and resources away from the people who need it most.
And two,
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm just going to be blunt, because a lot of my writing, especially like my
Mm-hmm.
plays and short stories,
Mm-hmm.
and what's funny, I'm from a very working class, blue collar, union workers
Mm-hmm.
background. My parents were
Mm-hmm.
first generation. I'm first generation.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, I'm always writing about. Sorry, I live near train tracks.
That's okay. So do I. So I'm wondering if my train
Yes.
is coming.
And I always find myself writing
Mm-hmm.
about the upper middle class African American experience, because it's something about the ways in which
Yeah.
respectability politics,
Yep.
white supremacy operates
Mm-hmm.
with it. And
Mm-hmm.
now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, my work does do that. Like, I'm right
Right.
now writing a short story for
Mm-hmm.
the Art of the Short Story workshop, where I'm
Mm-hmm.
exploring a Black woman she finally escaped a horrible domestic violence situation, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
wealthy family. It's a
Sure.
wealthy family, but she's a trad wife, and
Right.
I don't know
Right.
why I'm always exposed, but it's something. It might be I need to do some shadow work, but I'm like, it's
Mm.
something about the African American experience when it
Yeah.
comes to upper middle class,
Mm-hmm.
and I wonder if I wonder if I do that and want to
Mm-hmm.
explore that, because I'm now in that bracket,
Right.
and I
Right.
always feel really guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was telling my husband the other day, like, yes, I'm suffering right now because I'm unemployed at the moment,
Right.
but nothing will be as bad as
Mm-hmm.
the winter their heat got shut off. And
Yeah.
I was in college, so I was living
Right.
away, and I didn't, and I still feel bad about that, or even still feel bad
Mm-hmm.
about when both of
Mm-hmm.
my parents died in the 2010s. They
Right.
died very poor, but they left behind very
Mm-hmm.
good, cushiony life insurance
Mm-hmm.
policies.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel sick to my stomach about that. And so
Right.
I've become a part of the class that I'm always
Right.
examining. So thank you for
Mm-hmm.
writing a character like Trey, because that's a
Yeah.
part of the Black experience that I feel like
Yeah.
we don't really discuss as much until the political stuff comes up.
Yeah, and I think, I didn't think about it much because first of all, I grew up in the hood and I went to public school my entire life. So it wasn't until I got to college where I was like surrounded by white people and I was like, I'm confused by this. I don't know what's happening. But not only that, that was the first time I was kind of around Black people of many different classes, and I was understanding more how poor I grew up and what we had to sacrifice and what my parents had to sacrifice and the things I just didn't get to have. So now in all of my work, I'm thinking about, where my characters grow up, how that impacts them, and if, the respectability politics of some of my characters are trickling down, or if they have to unlearn some of these things, because I think at some points, you do have to unlearn it, or you should unlearn it. So I'm really putting my characters to the test all the time about what they believe and if they should believe it at all.
Yeah, and also too, just like, I'm not going to say that this work is doing that, but it's like, what is the juxtaposition of those who like grew up in the hood who,
Right.
like, because I think you and I have a lot of similar.
Mhm.
I'm a proud Detroit public school grad. Like,
Mhm.
and I so proud to be from the hood. Like, people
Mhm.
who live here forget, like, even my husband forgets. I have to remind him sometimes. Be like, do not, because I will go.
Right.
Please do not go there.
Right. Because I'll go there. I might
Yes.
not look like I'll go there in a little mock neck, but I'll go there.
Yes. And which I love mock neck turtlenecks. That's why I hate that it's getting warmer out. But
Same.
yes, but I love that there's that's like safe dance
Mhm.
of the juxtaposition of the
Mhm.
two lives, and it's an experience that is extremely important to render. Like, I remember a
Right.
couple of seasons ago, I had on Toni
Mhm.
Ann Johnson, who
Mhm.
writes from that very like upper middle class Black experience.
Mhm.
So I'm glad that you found a way to do that in this book, which it helps me to segue into this
Mhm.
question that came in earlier. How does being from the Midwest,
Mhm.
specifically from Indiana, because there's all kinds of Midwestern, like even Detroit is so different.
Mhm.
Um, how does being from the Midwest influence the way you approach craft?
That is such a good question. And I think so I just moved back to Indianapolis a few months ago, and I'm one, relearning the things I knew about Indianapolis and kind of unlearning some things. And I'm also two, learning to love Indianapolis. I spent most of my 20s kind of running away from being in the Midwest and wanting a bigger city, wanting a larger experience. But what I'm learning about the Midwest is that it's beautiful because one, we're here. The Black people are here, know that. But two, because it's just a slower pace. And so because it's a slower pace, I'm able to really sit with my work and sit with my characters and think about how the Midwest impacts them. Um, I was just telling someone the other day, gentrification moves quicker in quicker cities. In Indianapolis, you'll know what's coming, but it takes forever. And so, especially in Under the Neon Lights, how does that impact Jalen? She's seeing these changes, but they take the whole book for her to be like, for her to finally look up and be like, oh my gosh, the entire place, the entire neighborhood is kind of gone. Um, so I think the Midwest makes me slow down. And I also think it makes me observe more. As a poet, I have to observe more. I have to look at the things that I'm walking past every day and figure out how I can incorporate that into the work. I have to understand why my family is here and why other families are not, and why some of my family has never left Indiana. And I think that has a lot to do with it too. And so I'm on deadline for book 2, and the Midwest, wanting to leave the Midwest is a big part of the book. Um, and so, I'm writing for the Midwest girlies because I love it. I appreciate it. It's the place that shaped me. It's the place that raised me. Um, and I think there's a lot to be said about the beauty of Indianapolis and about the fact that we are a city, but we can drive 20 minutes down the road and there's cornfields, or we can drive an hour away and there's a waterfall, and we can drive, all these different places. It allows my characters for so many rich experiences. It allows my characters to really see the world around them in ways that I think I couldn't write from somewhere else.
Yeah, and I miss the Midwest so much.
Come on
And
back now.
I know, and it's funny when you mention the slowness, because
Mhm,
I live right, to give some context.
mhm.
So I work in Western Mass, which it's Birkenstock's white.
Oh. And you know what? Indiana is that too. Maybe. And
Yes,
somebody's gonna correct me, but that's how I look at it.
yes,
Well, that's more Portland. That gives more Portland than Indy.
yes.
Mm.
And where I live in Connecticut, I live in the northern part of Connecticut, so I live like not too far from Hartford and not too far from the
Mm, okay.
Massachusetts border.
Mhm.
And we got cows, and it's like it's rural suburban. You would think it's
Mhm.
slow out here until you have to go
Mhm.
somewhere and the people driving and all that. And I'm like,
What's going on?
what is?
Right.
I'm like, we have a lot of New York imports up here, but I'm like,
Mm.
where are you going?
Where are
Like,
you going?
I want to import Midwestern and Southern slowness
Yes.
here so
Yes.
badly because I'm just like, there is no need for us to be like New Yorkers up here. There is
Yeah.
just not.
There's not. There's not. And I think, I was living in Texas and I visited Indy all the time. And
Mhm.
for context, I lived in Dallas, and so I was always on the highway, and the speed limit is 70, and it was just
Mhm.
you couldn't soak anything in. And it was so nice to be able to write under the neon lights, and they're observing a sunset. They're looking at the stars. They're just slowing down. And I think it's
Yeah.
so rich to be able to slow down and to be able to think about how the world around you impacts you, and what makes it beautiful. And so now I'm doing 55 on the highway.
Mhm.
I'm able to look around and see, I'm able to take a gaze. And that really, I don't know, it just adds to the day.
Mhm. So I want to ask a question about Trey,
My boy.
which I love that he is introduced so early in the
Mhm.
story.
Mhm.
Why do you think romance stories are important for young adult readers to have access to?
It goes back to something I said a little earlier, but I want Black readers, especially Black teens, to be able to imagine a better life for themselves, especially when it comes to romance. I think so many times, for any age, you don't know what's healthy and what is good and what is caring and what is loving until you see it modeled somewhere. So under the neon lights, Trey is a cinnamon roll. He's silly, he's sweet, and he's a little annoying at times, but I think that's anybody. I wanted Trey to be a model, like Trey and Jalen's relationship to be a model for what can be romantically. Because sometimes you don't see that. You don't see that in the media. You don't see that in what you're reading. You might not even see that in the hallways when you're in school. And so I needed I almost said my students. I needed teens to be able to look at Trey and Jalen and say, wow, they go on like fun dates. I like that. Wow, they talk about really important things. They're so vulnerable with each other, or they learn to be vulnerable with each other. And I really like that. And not only do I like it, but I think I deserve it. I think it's so important for Black children to see that, and for them to understand that they deserve love too, and they deserve good, fun, precious love.
Now I want to segue a little bit more in terms of this particular genre, right? YA romance.
Mm-hmm.
So for most of the romance stories I've read, including Under the Neon Lights, the best, and
Mm-hmm.
I teach this concept when I teach this type of literature. So for most of the romance stories I've read, including Under the Neon Lights, the best friend, also the confidant, plays a vital role in both the overall narrative and the
Mm-hmm.
protagonist character's development. Why do you think it's important for romance to have the best friend be so prominently present?
I don't know about anybody else, but I'm telling my best friends everything all the time, even right now, especially when I'm dating. You gotta call and check for the outfit. You gotta call and see, okay, does this look good? Okay, should I say this? Okay, I'm so nervous. But it's also Noelle, she's her best friend, and she serves as kind of the opposite of Jalen almost. Because Noelle has a lot of experience with dating. Not that it's any good experience, but it's experience nonetheless. And so Jalen gets to be able to call no and be like, hey, I think this guy likes me. I think he has a crush on me. I'm not really sure. And Noelle can be like, you're being weird. You're being weird. Please fix it. If you like him, go like him. But I think that Jalen especially needed that push because she thinks she's so different from Noelle. But at the end of the day, they both want love. They both want companionship. They both want so much more for themselves than what they already have. So, you know, everybody needs a bestie, especially when you're trying to, when you're falling in love for the first time. Because even yesterday, I met a friend. We're scrolling through somebody's Instagram, and we're like, okay, so he's cool. Yeah, so he does this and this and this. Oh, he has hobbies. Oh yeah, great. And you need that reassurance, but you also need, if things don't feel good, you need to be able to go to somebody, especially teens, they don't always want to go to their parents. So you need to be able to have someone in your life who you can say, hey, this thing happened. I feel this way about it. Is this normal? Is this okay? Everyone needs a confidant. everyone needs a confidant. It's really hard to do life alone. And even though Noelle and Jalen's friendship is rocky, what I want everyone to take away is you need someone to do life with. And sometimes that does surpass the romance that you're in. Sometimes that friendship, those friends might be there forever. And there's no guarantee that the romantic interest will. So I needed them to be solid. I needed them to be solid.
And oh my gosh, the biggest thing for me with the confidants is they keep you from being locked up in somebody's basement.
Yes. All of my friends have my location. They know when I'm about to go on a date. They know when I'm doing something I'm not supposed to. They know, but I won't be locked in somebody's basement.
Yes.
I mean, hopefully not. Fingers crossed.
I don't ever want to see anybody that I know end up as an inspiration for a Law and Order SVU.
Exactly. Please no. Please no. Please.
Yes. So I have a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
So the next couple of questions are going into your work in general.
Sure.
So I've had a chance to read your essay, Black Language Shouldn't Have to Be Muted for White Readers, which the biggest thing that I loved about it, and we talked a little bit about this off camera, is why for white, even when I'm, because in some of my classes, I'm required to teach Shakespeare, which I have theater training. I used to absolutely love Shakespeare until I'm just like, when I got exposed to other writing. Right. And I'm like, we don't have, like, students
to do that.
Right. We don't have to be like, what does this word, I don't understand this word. The writer does not, dude, Willie Shakes has been dead for I don't know how long. Nobody is asking him to do the work for the reader. And I love that you point out, you're like, why do Black readers have to literally give a guide to how to read the language when like the Iliad and all these other very heavy, weighty, white written texts don't have to do that. And so I love that you wrote this article. This was a little while back. And I love like how like the vernacular shows up so tight and under the neon lights. Like I cannot wait to hear the audiobook just to rehear.
Yeah. I mean, because I speak like that. Yes. And my characters are going to speak like that too. It's part of where I'm from, the areas I'm from. It's part of, how my family talks. And sure, we'll code switch and like, I'm sitting here talking to you like this, but usually I talk like this and I really don't care and da-da-da-da-da and finna. Like my characters say finna, they say ain't, they say y'all. And those aren't particularly AAVE, but they are that is the way they talk because of where they're from and because of who they're around. I think I don't know. I kind of care a lot less about how I sound. And sometimes I slip into how I talk to my friends. But I think that's important. I think that especially to have it in a book, it's so important that Black kids can read this book and say, hey, that's how I talk. I say for real. I say type shit. I say, whatever. I wanted them to read the book and say, that's how I talk. Because a lot of times, especially in education, and I do think it's important that we correct and be like, hey, so the proper way to say this is blank. A lot of times, though, they get the message that, oh, I'm not supposed to talk like that. Oh, I shouldn't talk like that again. When really, you can talk like that. You should talk like that. If that's your language, that's your language. So I wanted readers to read Under the Neon Lights and be proud of how they speak and understand that, like, oh yeah, the language, the way I speak can be in a book, and it's a book that's published and it's a book that other people are reading. It's not just text. It's not just how my friends and I talk on the weekends. So I wanted teens to be proud of how they talk. And I talk just like that. So I think probably in every book I write, my characters are going to sound like that.
Which I love how it was yesterday. And I got to find a way to share it on Instagram because I shared it on Facebook. This is like the African American language vernacular is now, I'm so happy that it's so broad. It's so broad to where even my white friends laughed at this post. I posted, it was a video and it was like, Coach asked us Like
Mhm.
I'm guessing they did something wrong. This was, I'm guessing, at a
Mhm.
high school. They were like, you can either do 20 burpees or 20
Mhm.
Drew Hills. And the students chose to do 20 Drew Hills. My white friends lost it. And I cannot stop laughing. I've been going
Mhm.
back to that because I
Mhm.
was just like, oh my God, 20 Drew Hills. One, I love that high
Right.
schoolers of today knows what this is.
What that is.
But the vernacular, it helps that like
Mhm.
people can make that just that
Yes.
like I was
Yes.
like 22 Hills.
Right, what is going on? But it's, I think that it's so important that we make Black kids feel seen.
Yeah,
And one of the ways we can do that is telling them that their language is okay, that their language is normal, and that they can use it. Because a lot of times they're shamed out of that language. And a lot of times we're told that we need to code switch in all of these different environments. But
yeah,
for what? What do we stand to gain from that? I think we lose
exactly.
so much by doing that all the time.
Exactly. Um, I have been waiting to ask
Oh no.
a question like this because I
Mhm.
teach the coming of age story.
Yeah.
So, what are some advantages and challenges? And I'm not saying all YA is coming of age, but
Mhm. Mhm.
what are some advantages and challenges in the young adult genre, especially as a Black woman author writing coming of age narrative? Which
Mhm.
I want to say thank you so much for writing a coming of age story where both parents were still alive.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I can't
Yeah,
make any promises for the next few books, but you're welcome.
because I'll never forget first teaching the coming of age narrative, and students weren't understanding what the concept is. And I was like, let's walk through Disney movies. And they were
Right.
like, oh.
Mhm. Mhm. Right. They're like, okay, I got it now.
Yeah, so what are some challenges and
Yeah.
advantages in writing in this genre,
Mhm.
especially as a Black woman author?
I think I'm so lucky to have the privilege to write for Black teens, specifically Black girls. I get to imagine these bigger lives. I get to imagine worlds in which it is safe to be vulnerable, in which it is safe to have joy, in which it is safe to be around your community. Um, and that's a privilege. I think there's so many authors who are doing similar work, and it's also a privilege to be writing alongside them, or coming up after them. I think so many Black authors are supportive in a debut's journey, and you really can't pay for that. It's just like, I have been able to turn to so many Black YA authors if I had a question, if I needed guidance, if I needed a blurb real quick, if I wanted a conversation partner, and they are so willing to step up and be like, hey, yeah, I got you. This was my experience, or this is what you should be looking for, etc. So I think when I'm writing in the genre, it's not just about the content I'm putting on the page, but it's also about the support around me from people who maybe have never even met me in person. One of the challenges, of course, is kind of the same thing that's a privilege, which is I'm writing for Black girls. And so publishers don't always know what to do with that. It doesn't matter how many Black books come out. It doesn't matter how many Black authors are writing YA. Sometimes they just don't know what to do with that. And that's not to say, I think my publisher and my team has done a good job of finding those readers. But historically and widely, usually they find the Black readers and they don't find anybody else. But for the white books, they find all the readers. And so I think publishing often does us a disservice in only finding the Black readers, because of course I need y'all to find the Black readers. But I think there's been a conversation on Threads in the past few weeks. It's like, Black readers are tired of spending money. they're showing up for all the pre-orders. They're showing up for all the midnight releases. They're showing up for everything. And unfortunately, Black readers can't do it all. It can't, the onus can't be on a Black reader only for the success of a Black author. It's not fair. It's not fair. So I think the challenge is always being a Black person in publishing, where most of the teams are white, most of the employees are white, most of the books are white, most of the money is going to white people. I am lucky to have 2 Black publicists and a Black editor, but that doesn't always happen. And I think I'm also lucky that my team even those who aren't Black understand the vision and what I'm trying to do with this book and who I'm trying to reach. But yeah, I think always there are challenges in publishing, and there always will be for Black authors until we change what the makeup of the employees look like in publishing.
And then you mentioned this earlier, but I would love to hear more in the last question. What is next for you, and how can the Black Writers Read community support you on this journey?
Absolutely. So I am headed on tour. I will be in Indianapolis. Let's see. Too many places. Washington, D.C., Portland, Oregon, New York. I'll be in Brooklyn. Well, I'll be in Brooklyn at Cafe Con Libros, and then I'll be at the Bronx Book Fest. And then finally, I'll be in Dallas. So you can find all of that information on my Instagram. It's linked in my link tree. Indianapolis gets a skate party, though. Everybody else does not get that. And then from there, I am on deadline for book 2. I cannot say much about it because we haven't announced it yet, but it is in verse, and the characters are seniors in high school. So I'm really excited. I'm ready to announce it. I don't know if my team is, but I'm ready to get it out to the world. So yeah, that's what I'm working on. And eventually I'll have to write a book 3 so I can sell a book 3.
Yes, I can't wait until like you're doing like a Reese Bryan or a Victoria Christopher Murray, who I had on earlier this season, where I'm like, y'all are on book 31. How is this happening?
How? Right. I would love to know. I would love to know because I'm tired. So I'm exhausted.
Yes. So Arriel, it was such a pleasure to finally have you on. Thank you so much for like I say to folks, these mini masterclasses. Yes, I have people watching, but I gain a lot from these conversations. Thank you so much for the craft. Thank you so much for writing, and just thank you for being so authentic. Like, I love it.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I have been listening to the podcast for a while now, so it is so nice to be able to be on here, and I'm sure I will hate listening to myself back, but
Oh God.
it's so nice to be here and to have such thoughtful, curated questions, and have the crowd participation. It was really a joy. This is a great podcast, so thank you for having me, and I can't wait to listen to it back.
Thank you so much. And I hope to meet you in person at some point. I'm hoping
Yes.
to make it at some point on your book tour.
Yes. We'll figure it out.
Yes. So I'm going to do a little bit of wrap up, and then I'll catch up with you after I end the stream.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you all for joining me for episode 25 of season 5 of Black Writers Read. I will be back on Juneteenth, Thursday, June 19th, to close out the season. Support Black Writers Read by subscribing to my YouTube channel, where many of you are joining us from today, or the audio podcast, which is available on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Amazon Music. It is extremely important to also subscribe to the audio podcast, because I do some exclusive content there, which I'll be doing that over the summer. And while you're there, drop a review, as supporting me in these ways helps to grow the community, and it also helps others to find us. Visit Black Writers Read visit blackwritersread.com, and I should be used to saying this, to learn more about the podcast. Thank you all for starting your afternoon with us, and more importantly, for ensuring that Black authors continue to matter.